George Eustice, elected as a Conservative MP in 2010. You've been a Cabinet Minister. You're not standing at the next general election. Why not?
Well, I will have done 25 years in politics by the time of the next election, and I think that's enough for anyone, really. It was 15 years in Parliament as an MP, 9 years as a minister, all of them in one department. But before that, of course, I did 10 years as an advisor and a campaigner. So it'll be 25 years in total. I don't regret any moment of it. I've had a fascinating time in politics. It's had its frustrations and it's had its ups and downs. But I want the chance to pursue a different career, in the sort of final chapter, if you like, of my working career. I'll be 53. I think I'm young enough still to do something else.
What will you least miss about politics or about being in Parliament?
Elections. I think I find, and I've done elections as an advisor and a press secretary, and I've done elections as an MP. I find them exhausting and infuriating because actually, for whichever party you're standing for, you wake up every morning and there's some terrible injustice that's been dished out on you, something said that's grossly unfair from your point of view, at least. And you get the blame for lots of things that aren't your fault. And they are grueling, exhausting ventures. And I won't miss another election. Indeed, one of the main reasons I decided to go this time is having fought 5 elections, quite a few referendums along the way as well. I really couldn't face doing another general election. And I thought I just had to be honest with my constituency association about that.
Is there any chance of a majority Conservative government after the next election?
Yes, there is, but we've got an uphill struggle. And so it will be the first time in history that a party has won 5 consecutive elections in a row. Now, of course, we've had more elections than you would expect to have over the last 12, 15 years for various reasons that we're all familiar with. And I think there is a route for us to get back, but it needs Rishi Sunak to basically stick to the plan he's doing. It's hard work, but getting credible, sensible decisions made, showing good judgment, evening the keel, if you like, getting the economy back on an even keel. If we do all of that, then I think doubts might start to set in about Keir Starmer and the Labour front bench, because I personally don't think they really look like a government in waiting at the moment. And that's different from Tony Blair. Tony Blair in the late 90s very much looked like a prime minister and a government in waiting. And I don't think the Labour Party look like that at the moment. Now, there's a lot of ifs in there, but it's doable. And of course, the hope of the Conservative Party is it'll be more of a 1992 election from our point of view rather than a 1997 election.
Was there a life event that politicised you?
Yes, I never intended actually to go into politics. I always had a bit of an interest in it when I was at school. But I actually intended to go into the family business, which was farming. We used to do quite a lot of soft fruit and vegetables, and we had livestock as well. It was quite a big farming business in those days in Cornwall. And we had a really big setback for the business in the mid-1990s. I was in the business in my early 20s at that time. And we ended up making a big investment in a new project. And then several years of very bad weather, a lot of bad luck, a lot of things went against us. To be honest, with hindsight, it was an overambitious project that we had taken on, but we did so to try and keep an old family farm in the family when my great uncle was retiring. But as a result of that, we ended up in a very serious dispute with Barclays Bank, who was our banker at the time. And that episode became, quite an acrimonious case, a test case on several fronts. And in the course of a year, there were about 27 different court orders, multiple court appearances. And it culminated with me at the age of just 22, acting as litigant in person in the High Court in Bristol to try to defend our family against, what was quite an aggressive move by the bank. And so that politicised me, and I became very politicised because of that. And I also blamed the exchange rate mechanism, which you might remember, ERM was the forerunner to the euro. And that also made me quite hostile to ventures to try to join up currencies in the EU. And it's no surprise, therefore, that my first job in politics was with Business for Sterling, the business campaign group to try to stop Britain joining the euro.
And in that campaign, you worked with Dominic Cummings, who was not a household name at that point, but went on to become Boris Johnson's chief advisor. They spectacularly fell out. Does Dominic Cummings' personality lend itself to falling out with people who's been very close to?
Well, look, Dominic Cummings and I, it was our first for both of us. We're the same age, actually, exactly the same age. I think there's only a few months between us. And for both of us, working at Business for Sterling was where we cut our teeth. It was our first job in politics. And on some ways, Dominic Cummings is a force of nature, and his ability to analyse things and be quite strategic, particularly in campaigns, in difficult battles, was actually very impressive. But his big weakness is he doesn't really work with others all that well. If you're part of the team, and he'll normally travel light with half a dozen really trusted people that he bonds with on a particular mission, and I was one of those during those years. If you're one of those, then you're part of the group, and you really understand how Dominic operates. But of course, in politics, you endlessly have to try to accommodate and be nice to people that have different views from you. It's about consensus building. And consensus building is not something that Dominic Cummings was ever, minded to do. His view, his perception, and I understand it, would have been that if you compromise to reach a consensus, then you've already undermined the purity and the clarity of your mission. And therefore, compromise wasn't something he did easily, and that makes it quite difficult when you get to government, because he wasn't willing to do that.
I just want to ask you about some comments you made in Parliament a couple of months ago in March, and these comments caused a bit of a stir. You said, many women do want to spend those first few years with their child. It's a short period in life where they can perform that natural nurturing role. We shouldn't belittle it, we should value it. Natural nurturing role. Bit of a backlash, people saying just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean you're natural and nurturing, and that's a stereotype. Were you surprised by the backlash?
Well, yes, because actually the point I was making in that speech, I was arguing the case for a transferable tax allowance. And the reality is that in most cases, the partner in a relationship that chooses to stay at home in those first few years is women. And that's a fact. It's not exclusively the case. And of course, there are men who decide to stay at home and care for children as well. But it's also the case that when parents drop their children at playgroups or childcare, they will find that most of the people who work in those places are also women. And again, there's no surprise about that. And I think it's wrong to belittle those women who do decide that they want to stay behind and play that nurturing role. And at the moment, there's a big problem with our tax system, which is if one parent chooses to stay at home for the first few years because they want those first 3 or 4 years to be with their child, not only do they obviously have no support for doing so, but they lose their tax allowance. And my idea is that they should, in those early years, be able to transfer their tax allowance to a working partner. And it might be the working partner, might be the woman or the man in the relationship. But it would mean then that the family unit would have more of their income that they earn to help with those costs that they have in childcare. But this is I stumbled into the very contentious debate. The gender debate, highly charged gender debate that we have in this country. But I stand by what I said, and I used the term motherhood for a good reason, because I do think there is such a thing as a maternal instinct, and I think it's wrong to deny it.
Who do you think, the word belittle, that the role, a caring role, obviously this is contested, but let's assume that women have choose a caring role, and you said it shouldn't be belittled. Who do you think belittles it?
I think there's a culture in our society that says you should get back to work straight away, and stay-at-home mum is almost seen as a term of abuse. Actually, I think it is in that sense by some sectors of our society belittled, and I had lots of parents who had chosen to stay at home who contacted me. The vast majority of people who contacted me completely supported what I said, and there was one mother I heard about who said that she when her child was born, she was asked what to put as her occupation on the on the birth certificate, and she said, "Well, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mother." And then the person, the registrar, said, "Well, what did you do before you were a mother?" And she said what career she'd done a couple of years before, and they said, "Well, we'll put that down." And it was almost as though they thought, "We're doing you a favour by putting your former career on, rather than valuing the role that you've declared you're passionate about and want to do."
Are you good round the house?
I actually, we carve it up quite well, and I have at weekends I look after my young daughter, and I'm usually the first one she wakes up in the morning, so I get her breakfast and keep her entertained. I do most of the cooking in the house, but we share it around. So I'm not, I mean, as usual, because I'm a Conservative MP, tendency to me to be caricatured as some sort of misogynist or something in some people's eyes. It's a completely false caricature, actually.
Just a little bit about the brief that you held. Well, you really are an expert in that department of food, rural affairs, the environment, because you were a minister for so long, as well as being the Secretary of State. The weekly food shop, it's hurting us all. The cost of that weekly food shop. Is there any government policy that could help get those prices down?
When the price of oil and gas goes up, because it's linked to fertiliser and most of the inputs in agricultural costs and food distribution, then it's very, very sensitive to energy costs. And that's the prime driver. And there's a time lag in that those costs come through the system typically 3 to 6 months after the price of oil. And that's why they're quite stubbornly high at the moment. They will start to fall back. But there are other things the government could do. They could loosen and change the approach on immigration. I think having a skills-based immigration policy is actually wrong, because it means you're opening the door to solicitors, accountants, insolvency practitioners, orchestra conductors, all sorts of people that we actually don't particularly need at the moment. But what you're then saying is those sectors who are producing food for the nation can't have access to the labour that they need. And that's driving both a labour shortage and wage inflation as well in those sectors. And that's exacerbating the problem. So it's not the cause of it, but it's a big contributing factor. And the one thing the government could do is to basically carve out and say, food is different. We are going to have a temporary visa scheme, maybe with a 2 or 3 year visa for anybody who wants to work in the food industry.
And just on another important issue in the department that you have spent most time working in, animal welfare. There's a few issues where people in your own party, not just the opposition and campaigners, wish they had gone further and faster, thought Brexit would be an opportunity to do so. Any disappointments in that area?
Yes, I all my time I've been passionate about animal welfare. The approach we take to animal welfare and the way we treat sentient animals, particularly farm animals, is actually the hallmark of a civilized society. And I've always felt we could do better, and there should be a constant effort to improve animal welfare legislation. And there were other bills still to be brought forward. One of them was the Kept Animals Bill that had a package of measures, including the ban on live exports, which was something we wanted to do and was a Brexit benefit. And sadly, the government have decided not to take that forward. And I think that's a great shame. And they did so because they see animal welfare as a contentious issue. They were worried there would be all sorts of emotive amendments and it would be difficult to manage. The truth is, though, we had already planned for that. I developed, as the minister responsible, a handling strategy and a management strategy for any conceivable amendments that could have been made to the bill. So I'm very disappointed the government didn't take it forward, but we are where we are, and we'll now have to try and pick up some of those measures in other ways, such as private members' bills.
Might you do that?
I might do that, but there'll be a bit of me that thinks I did all the work before, and we could have just done this with an extra 5 hours of time in Parliament, of which there's plenty of times when Parliament disappears home early, so it could have been done. And it was really only, I think, sort of excessive caution and sensitivity to the risk of emotive issues that caused them to delay it.
Really enjoyed that chat. Really enjoyed getting the benefit of your wisdom, particularly in that department that you spent so much time in, and wish you well for the next chapter. Whenever that election comes, when do you think it'll be?
I can't see really an incentive for government to go particularly early at the moment. So I still think probably October next year, 2024.
We'll put it in our diaries. George Eustice, thank you very much.
Thank you.